Hi, I'm Chef Frank, this is Protocooks, and today is Knives 101 Part 2, How to Sharpen. Just a quick reminder, if you enjoy what we do, hit the like and subscribe button down below. In our first Knife 101 video, we talk about how to purchase knives, the different types of knives, and some general care. In today's video, we're going to talk about general care, just kind of a recap, and how to sharpen them by hand. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone, this is a 101. This is basically just getting everyone into sharpening the knives at home. It is not an advanced technique. I am just giving you the basics here. If you don't do it the way I do it, feel free to comment down below. Tell me how you do yours. First thing I want to talk about is the knives that I have. I have 3 knives in front of me, and these are kind of my everyday use knives. I have a boning knife, a paring knife, and a chef knife. And I don't really have super expensive knives for my everyday knives. It's just never been a habit of mine. But these are the 3 knives I'm going to work on today. I have a honing steel, and a lot of people might think this is a sharpening steel. This does not sharpen your knives. It maintains the edge on them. It helps keep the edge in line. If you look at these knives under a microscope, the blade will look like a bunch of mini serrations, right? And after a while of cutting, these serrations start to kind of curl over and get a little dull. And what the honing steel does is it just kind of tunes them up. First thing I want to do is talk about the stones, and I have a stone here that's Japanese water stone. There's 2 different types of stone, water and oil. And I like to use water because it's quick cleanup, it's easy to use. I don't need to go out and buy any mineral oil. And it's just a lot easier to kind of maintain as far as I'm concerned. The stones always have a high number and a low number. The low number is usually the more aggressive grit, right? This is going to do the main part of your sharpening, whereas the higher grit is going to get the knife kind of tuned up and really a nice fine edge. And you're always going to start at the lower number. Water stones are porous, so they soak up some water. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and drop it in a little bit of water and let it soak for a few minutes. You can see there's bubbles coming up. Those bubbles are water going into the stone. And that's what we want. The water or the oil helps to lubricate the sharpening process, also helps to keep everything cool. So while my stone soaks, I'm just gonna get a towel ready. And like I said earlier, there's lots of different ways to do this. You can set up your knife horizontally or vertically. I like to do it vertically. Couple of reasons why is I have a drawer here and I can tuck this in the drawer, right? So that when I really push, the drawer actually holds the towel. This towel is gonna get wet with the stone. So what I'm gonna do is I take the stone and I rest it on my towel. I bring this just a little closer so I can keep putting water onto my stone. I want to consistently keep my stone wet. So I have my container of water here with where my stone's soaked, and then I can just go back and forth to that to keep my stone lubricated and wet. This might make a little bit of a mess. So make sure that you have extra towels lying around. You're probably gonna get water everywhere, but whenever I do this, it makes a little bit of a mess. The first knife I'm gonna sharpen is my paring knife. And now, like I said earlier, this is not an expensive paring knife. This probably costs like $8. But if you keep this knife sharp, it lasts you a long time. The way I determine sharpness is I will run my thumb over the knife. I'm not pushing down onto it because I don't wanna cut myself, but I'm dragging my thumb across the blade. Right? And what should happen is the knife should be kind of pulling on your fingerprint. If you run your thumb over and it just kind of goes over smooth, that means your blade is kind of really dull and it's rounded over. So I can feel that this knife is very rounded over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my stone really wet. And what I explain to people is this. If I hold my knife like this, it's 90 degrees. If I hold my knife like that, it's about 45. And if I hold my knife like that, it's about 22 and a half degrees. And that's the angle I'm looking for. Now, depending on your knife, that angle might be different. But again, like I said, this is a basic knife sharpening class. So I go 90, 45, 22 and a half. I also put a fair amount of pressure down on this. When I'm pushing on the knife, I am using my right hand to hold the blade or to hold the handle down and put some pressure. And then I'm holding my 2 fingers to hold my blade down. Now you do about 3 to 4 pounds of pressure. If you want, you can get a scale out and feel what that feels like. But I kind of know just by feel. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start at the tip of the knife. I'm gonna go all the way to where the blade ends, right? So I go tip of the knife all the way to where the blade ends. I push and then I pull towards me. Okay? Oop, try not to cut yourself. And I'll do this until my blade starts to feel a little sharp. That's how. And I usually just rinse it off in the water and I can start to feel that it's getting sharp. It might take a long time. It might not take all that long at all. But for the most part, I'm making sure that I get the full blade from the tip until where it reaches the handle. And I'm just kind of pressing down with a fair amount of force, and then I'm pulling with a fair amount of force on that 22.5-degree angle. So right now I can feel it starting to get sharp. I'm gonna do it a few more times. Right? I try and push away from the blade. I've seen people use the blade and they cut into the stone. I don't like that. I like to push away. Okay, rinse it off and feel it. So I can start to feel that it's starting to drag on my finger and it's starting to get sharp. I'm gonna rinse my stone and I'm gonna turn it over. Make sure it's wet. I'm on the finer side now. Now I'm just trying to like tune that edge up. Putting a fair amount of pressure down. Okay. Now it's really nice. It's getting there. Okay. It's easier with the paring knife because the knife, the blade is small. When we get to the larger blades, we're gonna have to move it a little bit different. But I think that this knife is getting there. I think we're really nice. Now I get my steel. My steel is the last thing I do. That same angle, and I'm just going to run it along my steel, right? I'm not going all the way down, but I am getting the whole length of the blade. That same 22.5-degree angle, and I think that that knife is nice. Next knife I'm gonna do is my boning knife. This is a firm boning knife. I like the firm one. It's just easy to get around corners. And this isn't so bad, but I'm gonna tune it up and make sure it's really good. So one thing I also did was, not only did I tuck my, my towel into my drawer, I got it wet. When I was doing the paring knife, it was sliding back towards me. So if you get your towel a little bit wet, it should hold it a little bit better, okay? I washed my stone off in between just to get any debris off of here and clean it off. And then we're gonna do the same thing. Remember, we're starting at a 90-degree angle, 45, and then 22, 22.5. I'm starting with that angle, start at the tip of the knife, and I'm pushing down with my right arm, and I'm pushing down with my two left fingers to get it all the way from the tip to the handle. And I'm pulling. So I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on this just to get it right, okay? And again, this goes for as long as you can go until it's sharp. I rinse it off and then I test. Again, I want to feel my fingerprint being pulled on, okay? I'm gonna go a few more times. Like I said, this knife wasn't all that dull, right? You can hear that I'm dragging it across, but I try and keep that steady angle, okay? Some people say it's 17, it's 18. I just do the 22.5. It's easily divisible and easily teachable that way, okay? So now I go to the fine side, right? So this is just tuning it up a little more. You can hear that it doesn't make that, it doesn't make like a pulling noise as much. It's a little like glass-like, right? Okay, let me give it a few more. My stance, I'm using my body weight. I kind of get a nice firm stance with my feet. All right. Give it a feel. Getting there. You can also feel sometimes that it gets rounded over on one side and one side is sharp. So you can go once or twice on the same side, right? I'm not a big fan of doing this. I like to try and get it as evenly as possible. Go one side, next side, one side, next side. Okay, that's pretty good. Right, I'm gonna dry it off, clean it off, and then go to my steel, that same 22.5-degree angle. Right, I'll feel it. nice and sharp, ready for the next round. Okay, last but not least, I'm gonna do my chef knife. I like to wash my stone off and get it clean, get the water clean in between sharpenings. This is by far my worst knife. I can actually see that this has some like little divots taken out of it. This is my everyday knife. I love this knife. It just feels really good in my hand. So I'm just gonna give this a nice tune-up. Okay, again, like I said, 90, 45, 22 and a half. I push down with a fair amount of pressure from the tip to the handle or to the bolster. This hand is actually gripping the knife and aiding in pressing down. So the hand that's holding the handle is actually pressing down as well. But you can see, getting it nice, that nice angle. Give it a feel. Well, it's not as bad as I thought. But I'm making sure that I am getting the full blade from the tip to the bolster or the tip to the handle. That's good. Let's turn it over. Give this a little rinse. Turn it over onto the finer side. And finish. Yeah, that's really nice. So the way that I do the steel is this. I will grab the steel. My thumb is underneath this guard and my fingers underneath this guard so that if I do slip, I hit the guard. I do the same thing, right? That is 90 degrees, 45, 22. And all I do is go from the bolster or the handle down to the tip. I'm really not even using the whole steel. I'm just using kind of the center part. I drag it across, switch to the other side, drag it across, switch to the other side. Let's do this. We can do this on an angle as well so you can see. Same angle, not a ton of pressure, just lightly dragging it across the steel. Okay? The other way you can do this is you can take the steel in front of you and pull it down that way. That works just as well. But you can feel it. You can hear it. Super sharp. A couple things I want to talk about before we finish the video is just some basic knife care tips. First thing is hand wash your knives. Don't put them in the dishwasher. What happens when you put them in the dishwasher, they get hot and they lose their temper, right? So steel is tempered. It's usually put into a very hot oven and then plunged in oil or water to give it a hard edge. And a lot of times when you put it into the dishwasher, it gets too hot and you lose the temper, which means it's losing the ability to hold a nice sharp edge. Hand wash your knives, please, and dry them by hand as well. I wish I could convince my wife and kids to hand wash all of my knives. I can't. They don't listen. One thing that I teach my students all the time is to steel your knife often. So as you're cutting hard vegetables, steel it. Put it on the steel every 10 minutes. And this will just keep your knife tuned up. So you have to sharpen it less. Another thing is choose a good cutting board. Use a rubber cutting board, a plastic cutting board, or a wood cutting board. I've seen people with glass cutting boards. You don't want to cut on hard surfaces. This dulls your blade way too quickly and ruins your knives. Last but not least, if you're going to get your knives sharpened by someone else, make sure they're hand sharpening them. When I was a kid, my grandmother had a few knives and the guy would come around ringing the bell. I thought it was the ice cream guy, but it turned out it was the knife grinder guy. That guy would grind the knives on the grinder. Not only does the grinder heat the knives up, and again, you're losing that temper and the ability for your knife to hold the edge. After a while, the knife goes from this, and the guy grinds it down, it ends up like this. So I don't like to put my knives on a grinder. Hand sharpen knives. If you're gonna send them out, I know there's some services out there that will hand sharpen your knives. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. If you did, give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We have merch in the description down below. Check it out, Need Salt t-shirts. I wanna thank our Patreon patrons for helping support our channel. It's much appreciated. We have a P.O. box if you want to send us anything. The address is in the description down below. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. I'm Chef Frank. This is Protocooks. Have a good one.